Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Teachers Tea Time podcast. My name is Mark and I hope you're doing well. We're proud to be a part of the Edjacent collaborative. Learn more at edjacent.org. I have a mug of tea ready, so let's sit back, relax and get on with the show. Today we're wrapping up our conversation with Josh Wilson. In this episode, he explains his dissertation research about experienced new teachers. Who are they and what do they need? At a time when teacher retention is really important, Josh's work was really timely and vital, and it was rooted in his own experience, so it was really personal and relevant. Anyway, have a listen and tell me what you think.
You know, the last thing often people want to do is talk about school, but these teachers really wanted to share their stories with me.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And I interviewed them. I put them through a lot, and I interviewed them, pretty deep interviews. The first two interviews plus the dialogic journal, which was great, and questions to consider. And then we had a focus group, and then a third intense interview. And that was a lot to ask teachers in the summer, especially after the year that we had.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the focus of the study was experienced new teachers who have taught outside of the Midwest, who have relocated to Wisconsin to provide some context and what their experiences were like. Because my thought was, all right, well, if I'm teaching in a place like Fairfax County, Virginia, and then I move to teach in like Montgomery, Maryland, or Prince George, Maryland, am I really going to be seeing a big difference?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe
we don't know.
Yep, absolutely. Or if I'm like living in Kansas City, Missouri, and then I take a job in Kansas City, Kansas. Is there going to be a big difference? So my initial thought, and this is why I think the research is so important, or I should say, I think why making sure that your proposal is clear and that your methodology is clear, because my assumption was that everybody was going to talk about culture. They were going to talk about, like, Wisconsin is just unique. It's the beer culture. It's the Packers. It's wild. Nobody talked about it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this was my autoethnography. Half of it would have been devoted to that.
Yeah.
And, when I was talking with these people, it's qualitative research. You can't lead people to say, well, don't you think this? And I really wanted to say, well, but you have to admit, Wisconsin is unique, But I will say, as a caveat to that 4 out of the 5 participants were originally from the Midwest, but the one participant who wasn't from the Midwest, who was from the Southwest, specifically said that when they moved to Wisconsin, they moved to a smaller community, small city. She said there was no difference. There was, kids are kids, people are people. She mentioned the bar culture briefly, but she's like, I don't drink, so it doesn't really come up.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I wanted that context of, I've never been here. Now I'm here. What do I do? And, it was all based on my experiences, and that's reflected in the first chapter. But, what they shared was so interesting. As a first year teacher, you were so overwhelmed with, all right, I've been student teaching. I've had this person kind of tell me what to do. I've made some new things here and there, but predominantly kind of in their classroom, And now you, as a new teacher, you're trying to navigate, and many times you're in a new city, you're in a new school, you're navigating like your personal life as a professional, as your social life as a professional. So it's not just work, but it's this whole this whole world of things you have to consider. Well, what I got from the research was that as experienced new teachers, the curriculum, even if you're moving to a new school. Like, I moved to if I moved from Virginia to Minnesota and I'm teaching AP US, it's still the same.
That's right.
I'm teaching curriculum that's really effectively the same stuff, if not pretty similar. And so while you will teach new courses, like I did teach some new courses, so some learning curve with that. But I know what I need to be successful. I know what I need in terms of like resources. So where do I go to get that stuff? I don't need to be told all of this Like, this is how you plan, this is how you pace,
Yeah.
this is what a curriculum framework is. I know all that stuff. And so the biggest thing that came out with all the research is really just a sense of belonging, of experienced new teachers. They know what they need to be successful. They need to have access to that. They need to be an advocate for themselves, and they need to feel like they belong either professionally, socially, or both.
Right.
And once they have that, we know that experienced teachers are generally more effective in terms of assessment scores. And so my thought with this was, and it was interesting that I had defended the proposal as we were just starting to kind of get information about people resigning, in the not the aftermath, I mean, it's still going on, but with the realities of COVID from teaching professions. And now we're seeing just this whole teacher shortage just becoming a major problem, everything from trying to offer subs, like I saw one school district that's offering over winter break, they offered subs from offered jobs, sub positions to kids who had graduated but were now just in college.
Yeah, so you go here in Kansas. They've changed the law to reflect that you can be a high school graduate, 18 years old, you can sub. Yeah,
I know a lot of those are temporary, and I get that, and I understand that.
Hopefully it stays temporary, but but it's interesting the research you're doing, because and the research you do for your PhD, looking at this idea of experienced new teachers, because it's the experienced folks now who are the ones who are leaving.
Yeah,
we always worry about new teachers because we know 3 out of 5 new teachers leave within the first 5 years. That's kind of that's a given, and always has been.
Yeah.
And the current new teachers don't know any different. They're graduating at a time of COVID.
Right.
But it's those of us that have been around the block a bit who feel we need some support and aren't getting it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about your study is you kind of pinpointed that in that context of people who have moved from one place to another is they're not going to, you can't treat them like they're new teachers because they're not new. They're new to the area, they're new to the school. There is some culturalization to go on because they've got to feel that sense of belonging. So what sort of things can we expect schools to do? What should school be thinking of doing to make somebody who is experienced stay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this wasn't really an issue in the study, but it was. None of the teachers really. Well, I hate to say this, but none of the teachers really talked about salary. The number one thing I would say is just pay more.
Yeah.
But I think the issue is, you want it, nobody goes into education because they want to be wealthy.
No. But we don't talk about the money side of things enough as educators. It's just, we're doing this out of the goodness of our hearts. I mean, now's a good time to start saying, well, hang on a minute, what is it worth to do this?
I think something that was reflected was that, teachers that we're really not in it for the money, but we do want to get paid a decent wage because we're highly educated and experienced, and it certainly should reflect that. But anyway, I mean, they want to feel as though they are, they know what they're doing, right? They want to feel as though that they have support in what they're doing, and they want to feel as though they have connections. Meaning that as a brand new, as an experienced new teacher, it's kind of hard to fit into this. Like, for example, I came to my current school. Most of the people that work there are former students of that school. And then they graduated from that community and they went to this local extension campus of the University of Wisconsin, and they came back. And fitting into that was a challenge because I'm not from here. I don't have these same experiences, and that was difficult. But to be able to support them, to be able to say, like, your voice is recognized, it is heard, your experience is valued. That was the biggest thing. They want to feel as though they can contribute to the direction of the school. So there's this in the study, there was this 4 out of the 5 participants felt as though their transition was complete. Like they're now a recognized member of the faculty. They're valued, they're well regarded, they are in this community. The one that didn't the reason why she said she didn't was she had come to a new school and it was just a bad experience, and it didn't go well. She was paired with a mentor teacher who it just did not work. And now she's at a new school and she has this mentor that she works with, and it's not in a formal capacity. And that was another thing that was really interesting, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But she felt like at a school that she had been to before she had come to Wisconsin. So she was in Wisconsin, she left, then she came back, is what I'm trying to say. And at that school that she was at before she left, she had written a letter to the author Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird. And Harper Lee wrote back, and she was like, this is something that I can put on the wall and say, I did this. Like, this is what we did for this community. Like, we met arguably one of the most impactful American authors of the 20th century. We spoke with her, and she was looking for that. So she, the thing that was so powerful in one of her interviews was she had said, I was invited to this person who's from here, from the community that she now, she said it was a really small community. I was invited to her house, and it really feels like I'm starting to belong.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And that was like, you could just feel kind of her sense of relief. And it was really powerful. And for me, I obviously I couldn't say, well, yeah, I did the exact same thing. Let me tell you about that. But, it was really
parallels with your experiences throughout.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I had, and I wanted to say that to her, but of course it's her story to tell me. But in many ways, like, I did not feel as though I was accepted in the school. And I mentioned this in one of the journals, which interestingly, well, I don't want to give too much information away, but I replaced a guy at my current school who had been there for a year, but he was a brand new teacher right out of college. And the student walked, as like my first day or two in the building, students were there. First day that the students were there, and the student walked by, and she said, oh, that was Mr. So-and-so's room. And every time I walk by it, I miss him and I get sad. And I'm like, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Right here. And anyway, she's a wonderful person, wonderful young woman, and she is in my class. Students can sign up to be in classes for like the study period. She's there all the time, and I chat with her, and she's just nice as she can be. But I felt like, this is going to be tough. Everybody's from this community. The principals from the community. It's, I don't want to make light of the situation in any regard, but I just spoke with I'm the new teacher mentor for the high school. And I spoke with if you're a new teacher, if you're a new teacher in the building, you have to have a mentor. And it's just it's just somebody that you talk to, and it's a formally assigned mentor. And we have a new person who replaced a gentleman who was from the school, lived in the community, who had recently passed away from cancer a couple weeks ago.
Oh my goodness!
And this other guy that stepped in the person that passed away he was a great guy, but a special education teacher, and was he had been out a lot because he was obviously struggling with his health, and then he was replaced by, or his position was filled, I should say, by a guy who had just graduated from college. And I spoke with him today, and I said, so where are you from? And he said, right here. And I said, oh, of course you are. Yeah. Everybody's from here. But that's something that's really cool about that community, I think. But as an outsider, it's difficult. And
so it just got me wondering, we have these experienced new teachers have this sense of alienation, maybe, as they come in, and it's getting over that. And you said, that the solution is they want community, they want what are the other two C's?
Competence, and they want to be confident.
Okay. And I wonder if we're seeing experienced teachers who aren't new in a place, who are now thinking about leaving the profession, if they're feeling similar senses of alienation.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think this would be some really interesting research to be done about. We keep hearing about burnout and about getting more and more responsibilities with less time to themselves and less time to kind of decompress. I mean, I was just reading an article about teachers. We're the ones that listen to so much of what students are going through in their personal lives, and we take that home with us. I have a kid who I've had kids in the past who have struggled to, they're homeless. We've had kids in the past that have had any number of issues confronting them, a loss of a loved one. I mean, you name it, and they share that with us, and it's important, that they speak with us and that we know kind of what's going on. But in my own circumstance, I try to be empathetic and I try to be encouraging, but then I think about what struggles when they leave, this is what they're facing, and it's tough to kind of keep in mind and to think about. And I think it occupies so much of a teacher's brain space that, well, maybe I should get a job where it's not so mentally draining and emotionally exhausting. And one of the things that I want to do with this research is to find a way, like you said, to keep experienced teachers who are. I read another article the other day about what do you do for someone that loses the passion for their job that is their calling. And for me, education is my calling, and I'm very, very committed to it. I'm very passionate about it, but we're all human.
Absolutely.
So what can we do to support these teachers? And I think a little bit of this comes from a bit of a selfish perspective as well, is because I believe in the value of public education. It is instrumental to the success of this country and of this world for that matter. And I have two small daughters that will go through the public education system where we live. And so it's not just important for me to to find out what we can do to support experienced teachers, but so that those girls have those experienced, committed teachers as they move through school.
Yeah.
I mean, they're my kids. I love them. Of course you wouldn't believe, but you want what's best for them, and I think that's what's best for them, is to have committed teachers who can just focus on their classroom experience.
Absolutely.
And
that's so when we've got people who are struggling, when we're in collective trauma, they're feeling alienated. They don't feel a sense of community. They're not feeling competent right now because of all the negative publicity.
Right.
It's no surprise that we're having a crisis, and folks are wanting to leave, and good folks are wanting to leave, and are actively leaving. And I hope we can get them back in future when their spark comes back.
I think one of the things that was really interesting with this research as well is that we had you have formally assigned mentors and you have informal mentors. So for me, I had I'm not sure if I had a formally assigned mentor. Well, at any rate, I had an informal mentor who's there. He's a member of the community. He's been there forever, and it just is great to have somebody to just talk to. And I think teachers would become so insular. We become so busy with, I got to do this, I got to grade this, I got to write this, I got to have. When we have those opportunities to meet, it's usually in a meeting, and the last thought in our mind is like, I do not want to be at this meeting. It's after school, it's before school, when I should be grading, when I should be doing this other thing. But that just sense of collegiality is so important. Just for somebody to sit and talk to, and not just necessarily commiserate, but somebody that just says, I hear you, I understand what you're going through. Do you want me to offer advice? Do you want to just complain? Which is venting it's good for it.
Yeah.
At my principal's desk, who I think the world of the principal that I work with, he has this little, I don't know how to describe it, like a little item on his desk, and it's like put something here if you want to complain, put something here if you want a solution.
Yeah, then I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, because you can go there and, you can just say, like, I'm really frustrated about this. And, if you sit there talking about like a plan of action, you're like, we don't need that. I just need somebody to hear me be upset, and acknowledge that I'm upset. But yeah, it was really interesting research. It really changed my perspective about experienced teaching. I mean, a lot of the things I felt were confirmed, but in terms of things that I held dear were in terms of being a part of the community, which was reflected there. And then the idea of, is this transition ever over?
That's true. Yeah.
And that's something that I think needs to be further fleshed out. Is when I looked at so that was the other part of the dissertation, was the idea of the transition itself, the relocation. Is that transitions are granular. I might feel really confident in my lesson planning and my pacing. I might feel like that's like my instructional delivery is on point, and it is like it. Teachers' experiences and teachers' expertise is quickly transferable. So when I'm in my classroom in Virginia, how I deliver content, how I speak to students, how I work with communities, that just doesn't totally change.
No.
Our knowledge stays, our expertise stays. So that might be quick. It might be a quick transition, but I might struggle in terms of finding a connection to the community. I might struggle in terms of finding, I don't know, so. I mean,
it works well with the work we look at with identity development, and teacher identity development, because teacher identity, in theory, you say, it should be ever changing.
Yeah.
Always in a state of flux.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're looking to improve practice, you should always be in a state of flux. And I think at that point, when it stops being in a state of flux, that's a red flag. That's a problem. Because then you hit stagnation,
Yeah.
But sometimes you can have too much flux.
Yeah.
And that's crisis. And so it's going through those peaks and troughs of knowing where you are and who you are. And that's tough for everybody. And so you're right saying, do you ever stop transitioning? I don't think I would agree with you. I don't think people really do, because they may not physically transition, but they're going through an emotional transition, or they're going through a pedagogical transition, or they're doing something different somewhere else in some other way, as their role changes.
So for me, you're right. I was teaching new classes, but I was not worried about how those classes would transfer. For example, I never taught U.S. history, but I taught U.S. history for years. I had a master's. My master's really focused on U.S. history. I taught AP courses for years, so I wasn't worried about that. I was worried about being a part of this community. That to me was my biggest issue, my biggest transition. And there's really, then we went on COVID, and it was like, well, all this work I'd been done is just shot. I don't go back up there. So I don't see these kids out and about. Not that I would anyway, because everybody's wearing masks and whatnot, and avoid social distancing. But there's two things that first year that really helped me feel like I was becoming a part of the community. And the first thing was, I went down to this, and I wrote about this in my autoethnographic journal, and I went down to the faculty lounge, which some places is not a place where you want to hang out. At our school, it's nice. The principal comes and people have lunch together.
Oh, good.
I don't ever go there because, I don't want to sound lazy, but it's downstairs. And usually I eat lunch with my department mates. So at any rate, I go down to the faculty lounge. There's this whiteboard, and it has usually some sort of lighthearted question. Mm-hmm. This is before COVID, right? So we were just getting shut down, probably a couple weeks down the road. But it said, "Who would win in Jeopardy?" And there's a bunch of names, and then there was my name written there.
Oh,
And then I'll show you the second thing. I know you can't see this if you're listening, but this is I keep this right above me. So this is a box of letters that students have written to me.
Oh, wow.
Over the course of my time teaching. Mm-hmm. And so this is one from a student that she was a senior that year. Mm-hmm. She was in my AP US history class, and she had written that K-12, you have been my favorite teacher, so keep on doing what you're doing.
Oh, that's always the best confirmation, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I was like, that is outstanding. That means that things are going okay, and they're going in a positive direction. And then the following year, I was the seniors. The seniors choose somebody, one of the faculty members, to speak at graduation. And so my second year at my current school, I was asked to deliver that letter, that keynote address, I think is what it is. So that was a great feeling. And actually, I have my introduction over here framed from the young woman that said it. It's just something I'll always remember very, very fondly. But in many ways, I don't think my transition at that school is ever going to be complete. I may always feel like an outsider just because I'm not from that community. I don't live there right now.
Supporting new teachers has always been a priority for schools and school systems, especially when we know that 2/3 of new teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years of their career. So Josh's focus on experienced folks who are in a new environment is worth engaging with if we want to address the needs of some of our veterans in the profession too. And this is something that the Edjacent Collaborative are concerned about, and I'm pleased to say that Josh is going to be working with us on just this issue in the future. I'm looking forward to hearing more about his work as we move on. But until then, that was episode 39 of the Teachers Tea Time podcast. This podcast is a proud member of Edjacent. If you're looking for community, coaching, or content based on around your needs, point your browser to www.edjacent.org and become a member for less than the cost of a caramel macchiato a week. So go ahead and navigate to www.edjacent.org and choose Become a Member. It's the stories of teachers and students and school communities that matter most in education. So to make them visible, we need your help. Please leave positive reviews wherever you are able. Leaving a good review makes the podcast visible. Also, please don't keep this podcast to yourself. Tell your friends to subscribe and listen too. One thing we all have in common is that we've been to school. Everyone has an educational story to share. So if you'd like to contribute to the pod in any way, if you have a story to share, long, short, tragic, or comic, if you have comments to make about the podcast or just want to say hi, you can send an email to teachersteatimepod@gmail.com. Or alternatively, you can send emails to me directly using mark@edjacent.org. I love to read what you have to say. If social media is your thing, you can follow me on Twitter @MarkDearcop. You can find our contact information, copies of show notes, and you can download previous episodes of the podcast at www.teachersteatimepod.com. The podcast artwork was created by Phaedra. Opening and closing music was by Brian Boyko. It's been my pleasure to be your host today. Thank you for listening.